This sighting occurred when I was a child about the age of 10, thus, the approximate year being 1971. It was a clear, warm summer evening and many of us kids on Phillips Drive, located on the west side of Indianapolis, were outside playing. We lived very close to what was then called Weir Cook Airport, now Indianapolis International, so it was common to hear jet planes rattle the windows of our houses every 5 to 10 minutes as they approached the landing strip. This was a rare evening when no jets came into land for a period of 15 to 20 minutes. At some point, as I was playing in the front yard, I noticed something shiny high in the sky, directly overhead. The sun was starting to set, and was reflecting off whatever the object was. More and more children began to notice it, and some of their parents, including my dad, came outside to see the object. The object began to look larger and larger, and we noticed it was because it was descending. After about 5 minutes, it had descended to a spot that seemed close overhead. I would compare it to the size of a quarter or $half coin if I were to hold it skyward, arm extended. At this point, it simply stopped, apparently hovering, although there was no sound coming from the object. By this time, probably 20 neighbors had gathered in their yards, looking upward at the object. I don't know if anyone took a picture. I don't think we even owned a camera at the time. It was very easy for me to see, as it was directly overhead. It was a silver saucer with rounded edges. It appeared to be solid and smooth with no markings. After hovering there for several minutes, I clearly saw a line of black dots, almost like data, although I wouldn't have called it data at the time, released from one side of the object. I counted 6 of these black dots, in a perfect line, each one exactly the same distance from the next. The dots were not big, and I am sure most of the people watching did not even see them, as they were discharged quickly and seemingly in precise order. Almost instantly, they were no longer visible, at least to me. After the dots were discharged or released from the object, it then began a slow ascent, eventually ascending high enough that it was no longer visible to the naked eye. It appeared to me that the object has ascended and descended at the same speed, very slowly, very deliberately. And I am guessing that it hovered stationary for about 5 minutes. At some point, I recall my dad looking at the saucer through binoculars. I also recall being very excited and running down to my friend's house, 2 doors down, shouting, "It's a saucer." After the event, I recall my dad calling Weir Cook Airport, now Indianapolis International, asking if anyone knew what the object was. The report was, it must have been a weather balloon. But in the years that have followed, I have seen multiple pictures of weather balloons, and this was no weather balloon. My memory in the hours, days that followed is vague. I seem to recall watching the TV news, perhaps the next day, but don't believe there was anything reported about it. I do remember that Mike Ahern was the broadcast journalist of the channel we watched. We only had 4 channels back in those days. I don't remember anyone talking about it, either, perhaps because, being children, we were too busy playing. I wish I'd asked my dad about this when I was older, but he died when I was barely 19. Yet now I am 53. My mom has no recollection of it. However, I don't recall her coming outside. She was probably cleaning up from supper. Dad and I were the only ones outside from my family. I believe my 2 older sisters were at marching band practice. I don't know why I'm just now telling this story. It's just something I felt I should tell someone, because it was a very real event, the likes of which I have not since experienced. I did find one of my childhood friends on Facebook, but she did not recall the event. Perhaps she was not home at the time. I know of a couple more of the old neighbor kids that I can contact on Facebook, and will ask them if they remember it. I do recall with great specificity the street, the address, how the grass felt beneath my bare feet, and the unique mixture of cool warmth on my skin that summer evening. And I wonder if anyone else has reported a similar story to you. That any one of the people who stood outside and watched this rare event that night on Phillips Drive. Thanks for the opportunity to share. Note, I do not know if we were on Central or Eastern Time in Indianapolis back in those days.
On the night of August 14th in I believe 1990, My best friend and I were hanging out outside our apartment building when one of us noticed a very slow-moving or possibly stationary black object in the SW sky, which at the time was the direction of the Indianapolis, Indiana airport. We watched the object trying to figure out what it could be. We would see the object for a minute or so and it would slowly move out of our line of sight due to trees blocking our view. After a short time, we would see the object again above the tree line and it again would hover and move slowly. We watched the object over approximately an hour's time. When we first noticed the craft, it was moving very, very slowly east from what appeared just above the area of West Washington Street and the I-465 ramp. We seen the object move east, then lost sight of it due to trees, so the object was probably about 100 to 150 off the ground. After we lost sight of the object the first time, we seen the object several minutes later, this time at a closer distance and now traveling west this time. It seemed to continue this path east and west a few more times before the sightings stopped around 1 a.m. on August 15th. I recall talking about the craft having red and blue lights but do not recall if they were solid or flashing or if there were any other colors. I am certain about the date being August 14th because my birthday was the next day. However, the year could have been 1991 instead of 1990. I remember talking to my dad when he arrived home around 1 o'clock to 1:30 a.m. on the 15th and described the object. He dismissed it as a UFO due to it having lights. He stated if it was a UFO, they would not draw attention to themselves by having colored lights. He also stated that UFOs would not be so close to a major airport, a mile or less away. My fiend observed everything I saw and jokingly ran out to the street, jumped up and down, waved his arms yelling, "Me, me, me," but we never spoke about the event after that night. Being 12 years old, we did not feel afraid for some reason. Some years later, I seen the military's new stealth jet and recall it looked similar to what we had seen. However, the object we seen was completely silent, at least from our distance. Living that close to a busy airport, we would see and hear commercial jets countless times a day, and from that distance the sound of a jet would be extremely loud and we would have felt the vibration as well. Also, the craft was much lower than a jet or plane would be and was moving very slowly, maybe 10 miles per hour, and appeared to hover in midair on a few occasions.
1979-07-0012 a.m. Indianapolis, Indiana. My earliest memory when I was 4 years, witnessing an event with my older brother at the time was 8 years. He had me come to the bedroom window to see what he was seeing. When I got to the window there was a glowing bright ball of light hovering outside our second-story window. The ball of light then dropped down and disappeared below. Not maybe a minute later it flew straight back up to our window, hovering for about a minute, and took off upwards fast as it could go. Shortly after seen a car driving through the alleyway. The light the ball gave off was brighter than the headlights from the car, and brighter than the street light from the alley. The back of our house was shaded by trees, with minimal light. Can't remember any event after that other than the next day, my older brother was trying to draw out a star-like object that represented a compass-like star and showing it to a friend. I don't remember seeing that in the object, but it was bright and fascinating, as it scared my brother. Can't remember any more after that day at that address at that age, but one other thing that has nothing to do with what I saw.
The 10th of June 1984, 2 p.m. Indianapolis, Indiana. I was fishing in a pond on a beautiful summer day, when I saw this huge, long thing slowly gliding through white puffy clouds. There was no sound, and it went on forever. It was larger round than a commercial airliner, and the amount of windows on the bottom really got my attention. I thought I was seeing things at first, but my angle was almost directly underneath it. When the end section became clear between the clouds, I knew it was not a prototype or anything from here. The end just tapered without any tail wings or anything. It was as silent as night. I wasn't close to any highways or roads. If not for the reflection in the pond, I would never have noticed it. It has bothered since that day over 30 years ago. When I tell someone what I experienced, they either laugh or tell me it was just a jet or I'm crazy. I started to doubt myself for a while, but I can't deny what saw. It was massive in length, no wings, hundreds of oval windows on the belly and silent. You tell me.